Facing challenges and overcoming setbacks is part of doing business. Whether you have the expertise to survive them or not could mean the difference between success or failure. Welcome to We Are Women, featuring revealing conversations that provide invaluable insights into the success secrets of female masterminds. A must listen for every entrepreneurial woman. Now here's your host, Janine Vosper.
Hi, I'm Janine Vosper and welcome to this episode of the We Are Women podcast. I have the fabulous Melissa Franks with me this morning. Melissa, let me just read through some of these amazing accreditations for Melissa. So a fractional COO, business strategist, advocate of high-performing women in business. She is a seasoned business strategist, podcast host and speaker, transformational leader with a track record of scaling businesses and driving operational excellence with a people-first approach that mobilizes teams for unprecedented results. A former Fortune 500 executive and On Call COO, top 100 COO. I'm going to have a talk about that one. A winner in 2022-24, she has led billion-dollar IT transformations, M&A initiatives. What's M&A initiatives? I meant to ask you that before we started, Melissa.
Mergers and acquisitions.
Okay.
So lots of sale transactions in there.
Imagine. And revenue growth strategies, blending corporate expertise with small business agility. As the founder of On Call COO, she empowers female entrepreneurs by optimizing operations and increasing profitability with a knack for helping business owners break through growth plateaus, implement scalable strategies, and build profitable, sustainable companies. Passionate about women in leadership and business innovation, Melissa is also an advocate for high-performing women, helping them design lives they love. And this is why I love. We had a brief conversation the other day, and this designing lives you love is just so important for us to recognize we can do that. So all of this while achieving balance and success. She is a strong voice for domestic violence awareness and family court reform. When not strategizing, she enjoys running, traveling, and cheering on her three sons at sporting events. So welcome, Melissa. There's so much in there that we're going to unpack that I can't wait to talk a little bit more on.
I'm excited to get started, and I'm so glad to be here.
The top 100 COO, so that's an American award, or can you tell me?
Yeah, it's an American organization, and annually they hold a big conference, and it's very focused around all of the wonderful things that we in operations love that bore the rest of the world, standard operating procedures and becoming more productive and efficient and how to leverage technology and really focused around how to get the most out of any sort of task or activity that you're doing. And I was actually nominated in 2022. I don't know who nominated me. I don't know where it came from, and have been very lucky that I have won the award, and I've been in the top 100 for 3 years. And I think voting is still going on for this last round. So we'll see if we make it again. But it's quite an honor, and I feel very lucky to be able to do this work and be recognized for it.
And, we don't do work to be recognized, but isn't it nice when you go, at least people realize the importance of what you're doing. I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not why I do it, but it was a nice surprise when it showed up in my inbox the first time.
Sorry, while we're here, I've just got to turn off something on my phone. I think I was on a phone call just before we came on, and I think that the person's still on it. It didn't turn off. That's fine. Everyone on the recording can hear that too now, so we're all good. Oh, things happen. It's fine. So particularly working with women in that space, Melissa, that's doing what? I mean, it says, helping them design lives. Tell me what that means to you.
So one of the biggest points of tension for women specifically. Men also have this, but we hear it more often from the female high performing professional or entrepreneurial space, is this tension between having life goals, whatever they may be, whether they're to travel and have freedom, or to have a family, or, you know, there's all of these life goals. And then there is the necessity and requirements of the professional activities to help you achieve those. And we can have lots of discussions about balance and if that's a real thing, and burnout and et cetera. But the entrepreneurs that I work with, the very first thing that we always do, because I have a firm belief, is the business that you start, the whole point of that business is to enable you to live the life of your dreams, whatever that is. And so if we're going to put all this blood, sweat, and tears and money and make sacrifices to grow this vision that you have professionally, we better make sure that whatever we're doing on the left is getting us the life that we love on the right. Otherwise, what's the point? And what I find is that when I get into working with a business owner, often I ask them, so what's the goal? What does your life look like? And I don't want to know money. I don't care if what your revenue goal is, but how are you living? How are you spending your time? Who are you with? Where are you? What are you doing? And often business owners can't answer the question because they're so caught up in the hamster wheel of running the business, trying to grow the business, solving problems, that they don't know what that is. And that disconnect, or that tension point, can really cause them to make business decisions that are going to sacrifice their life in the long term. And so we focus on that from the outset, and then do all of the other things to help the business be able to enable the goals that they have.
And that's such an important thing, to do it from the outset, because otherwise, as you described, you get on this hamster wheel, and then, you know, it's really hard to get off. And I'm much the same when I'm, you know, working with clients. It's the first thing I ask them is, what do you want to build? What is it? And so that's the foundation. And what might that look like? You know, so that you've got somewhere. It's not a goal. It's what your life is going to be like.
Absolutely. And it can evolve and change. So the great thing is that you can rewrite that picture that you have as many times as you want. If you lose sight of that, though, and you start to make decisions that will impact how you live your life, sooner or later, you're going to get farther and farther away from that vision that you want, because your decisions that you're making on one side are not in pursuit of the vision that you had mapped out for yourself. And so it can continue to evolve, but you have to remember that there's yin and yang, and you've got to adjust everything when you adjust one thing.
Yes, and we'll go into some, I know you've got some great ideas on how to do that. But I know you've come from large corporate, and now doing what you're doing. What was your motivation, and what was your progression, and why?
I had a non-traditional career in the corporate setting. I let curiosity and the principle of saying yes to any opportunity build my career. So if you actually looked on paper how I bounced around to departments and how I moved up hierarchies, and I went left and I went right, there is no rhyme or reason or strategy per se, except that I always took an opportunity when it was presented and I remained curious. And that got me very far. It got me to the C-suite of a technology company. I was, at one point, a part of the 1% of all female tech executives in the United States, which unfortunately, that's still the number. It hasn't improved over the last few years. And I really enjoyed the ride, but I enjoyed building businesses. I don't enjoy steady state. When businesses are thriving, they are boring. And I love to hand those off to people that love to run the boring bits and pieces that are incredibly important. And so I left corporate and went to a startup. I had been consulting technology startups at that point for 7 years. And I had been consulting venture capital funds on the side, so I was incredibly familiar with the space. And I partnered with a private founder who unfortunately ran out of money 10 months later.
Okay.
And it was incredibly unfortunate, not something
Yeah.
I could have predicted or ask the right interview question for, or, you can do all of the right things. And unfortunately, that ended, and it ended at a time for me personally when my life was an incredible amount of upheaval. My then husband had, a few months prior, had been arrested for domestic violence. We were going through that whole process in family court and restraining orders and
Wow.
lots of things. And so I was absolutely a single parent trying to keep everybody safe, of 3 kids.
Mm.
And when I went looking for jobs, the few that I was able to find required me to travel 50% of the time, or weren't going to, the income was not what I needed it to be, or they just dried up. One day there was a role and the next day there wasn't. And I didn't have the luxury of time or another partner's income. And I really spent some time with myself, and I said, well, what can I do? I said, well, I know how to help businesses. And a friend had told me about a month ago that she needed some help. So let's call her and see if she does. And that was the very beginning. It was that one phone call to a friend, her saying yes, us signing a contract, me opening a business bank account, and then just one step in front of the other, because I had a passion, and I would do it pro bono for helping these small business owners figure things out, taking the expertise that I had and giving them that one answer, that one piece of sound advice that just unlocked all the possibilities in their business. And I figured out how to take what I love to do and help people that really need it.
And the beauty of you living the experience yourself, and then and I think that's, I've mentioned this before in interviews, is that's where coaches often come from. Okay, so I was in this space, I need to create it myself, I need to adapt, and then I know how to do it, and I know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that what's very interesting is I am excellent at building other people's businesses. You get me in there and I can troubleshoot, and we can unlock growth, and I can get you unstuck, and we can do all of things. That is my space. It is where I am happiest. And the first 6 months, 9 months of me being in business, that wasn't the case. While I knew what I needed to do and I could tell somebody else to do it,
Mm.
taking my own advice was really challenging. And I made some of the mistakes that I've watched other business owners make. I took advice from people that I really respected and trusted, and it was just not advice that was right for my business. And I would have told somebody in my shoes, "Stud, don't listen to them. What are you doing? That's not what you need to do." And so I did make some of those missteps. I did make some bad investments. I did uh, very innocently think I could rely on referrals for a while to grow my business. And so, to your point, there is something that's kind of come for full circle with it, where as soon as I started taking my own advice and do what I do for other people, my business grew almost immediately. Almost immediately. It was like a night and day difference. And so I can now speak with some additional authority and authenticity to business owners, because I have taken the advice that probably I shouldn't have. I have taken the gamble that maybe I shouldn't have. I have gotten distracted by things maybe I shouldn't have. And then when I put myself, back on the guardrails, it was magic, or intentional, whichever way you want to look at
Yeah,
it.
well, yes, but yeah, it just makes so much sense when you look back at things, doesn't it? But
It
it
does.
does. You've had that learned experience now, and it does
Yeah.
make you better at what you do
Yeah.
without fail. And I see, often younger people have done a coaching course and they come in as life coaches at 24,
Mhm.
and that's okay for a 17-year-old. That they'll be great, better life coaches for a 17-year-old than a 50-year-old would ever be, but
Absolutely.
not necessarily great life coaches for somebody more mature. It's all relative, and that perspective, looking back with the perspective or the capacity to fit in someone's shoes, I think that makes a big difference when you're working on yourself or working in
Yeah.
business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I come to the business sector, I come to these small businesses with over 25 years
Mm.
of expertise in the space. And so, to your point, um, the advice that I'm going to give, the opportunities I'm going to see, the problems that I can solve very, very quickly, are due to the 25 years that I've spent building the business acumen and like the learned experience and all of the things. And that's just not something you can teach in a 1-hour masterclass, or hand over in, a half day, workshop session. That's really something that comes with the territory. It's kind of
Yeah.
the stripes that you earn as you go.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, the longer we've been around, the more expanded skills that we
Yeah.
pick up. And I know as a speaker, I see different speaking opportunities, and one of the ones that's coming up and I've been hired to do for July, it was for country people on resilience. And sure, I can talk on that.
Yeah.
Or it actually won't be a lecture. It's a Christmas in July fun lunch. It'll be a fun experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, sure, it's not a problem. It's because you've got the experience. It's not that you're faking
Yeah.
it. It's
Yeah.
something it's occurred over the years. So yeah, it makes a big difference. Working with women is, and I work with women and men. It's really interesting with all my marketing and SEO. I attract more male clients, even though all my marketing is out to women. Which I find is really interesting. I love working with men because I'm like you. You've got 3 sons. I've got 2 sons, and 3 grandsons as well. So I know how boys work. It's a different space to working with women. Women often don't feel value within themselves, do they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting balance of working with female business owners because there is there's kind of a sliding scale of lack of confidence, all the way to what I refer to as the cultivated ego, which is just hiding the insecurity and the lack of confidence. And with female business owners, unlike male business owners, generally speaking, you have to bring in the business acumen and the emotional intelligence almost simultaneously because there is an emotional component to decision making and people management and customer experience and kind of every lane of business where men can compartmentalize and sometimes on the other end of the pendulum is we need to coach and encourage some emotion to come into play. And so what's been really rewarding is giving female business owners the tools to take the drama out of their business. Because when you have data and you have facts, it gets incredibly hard to argue with them because it's just the information in front of you. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time working with them on is listening to their intuition, and they can trust it, and they need to verify it with something grounded that could stand up in a court of law, or that you could put in front of your accountant and say, here's the proof, because then you're able to really say, is that nudge or urge that I'm getting backed by truth?
Right.
And that's not as much of a component with the male business owner space. So it's really interesting to watch kind of the psychology of the owner. And I'm sure that we could have a lot of very intelligent people on here to talk about gender roles and birth order and all of the things that come into play. But it's a very interesting approach to how they run businesses. And it brings forward opportunities and challenging dynamics sometimes depending on who the individual is.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And that's one of the reasons I think at the moment I'm working with more male private clients is because they make a decision that I want to improve this. So yes, I will now invest in it. Whereas women tend to go, well, I can't invest in it because the kids need the school fees paid, or they're going on an overseas trip to Paris. I mean, the mother saying, I haven't been to Paris, but I want my children to go and make the most of that experience. So I can't invest in myself. Yeah, which is such wrong thinking.
There definitely again, I think that it's interesting because it really depends a little bit on the human, but there can be this blurred line between personal decisions and business decisions. And, as we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, if you don't have a really clear understanding of that vision of what you want your life to be, then it gets really easy to sacrifice the business in pursuit of immediate reward in your personal life. And I see it often, whether it's like the new car or it's being able to say you have a big team when you don't need a big team. And now all of a sudden you have all these employees that you don't actually need, or the vacations or the photo shoots every 30 days, or, it always comes in a different instantiation. And often I find that it's because they've lost the focus on what the intentionality is of having the business. And it almost becomes this instant gratification situation and then panic. I got the thing and now, oh no, I need to go sell more. I need to make more. I need to do something on the business side, and leads into like hyper production or swirling. But it all comes back to that, like, where are you headed?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's taking your eyes off the prize is really what happens, isn't it? And we can all be guilty of that. I know in Australia, the 20s generation, the Zs, I'll never be able to afford a home. So I may as well go out to restaurants every night and buy coffee every day and just have all this disposable income, because I'm never going to be able to do that anyway. So it becomes part of that mindset that the big goal out there is not going to be achievable. So let's just enjoy the moment. Which is counterintuitive.
They're such an interesting generation, right? We had so many years of, there was evolution, but really kind of the rules of the road professionally were the same. You worked really hard, you saved your money, you were able to do X, Y, and Z, and at the end you're retired. And that was kind of the way that it worked. And then there was a handful of people that started businesses and, were kind of those outliers. And Gen Z is just rewriting the script, to your point. They're like, their point of view is, I'm going to enjoy my life now while I have it. So I'm not going to work 12 hours a day, and I'm not going to work on Saturday and Sunday, and I will pay my bills and then do what I want with the rest of it. And it's such an interesting dichotomy, because the older generations are really struggling because they can't figure out how to get on common playing field. Like, you need to earn your stripes, and you need to, dress for the job you want, not the job that you have. And a lot of these old adages that were out there, and Gen Z just does not care. They do not care. And they're excellent at what they do, and they have different skill sets that business owners desperately need. They know how to do things that I'm Gen X, I do not know how to do, that millennials do not know how to do. They're in a different world. And frankly, they're the ones spending the money. So it's who we should be targeting. But it's such a different perspective. What drives them is different. The goals that they have are incredibly different. And I think that one of the opportunities that businesses have right now is to understand that evolution, and those that can capitalize on it, that can lean into it, those that can understand the psychology of that generation are the ones that are going to really thrive, I think, in the next 5 years or so, because they're ripe for engagement on the right spectrum if you've got the right mission and values and purpose and all of the things. But I think we're at a very interesting crossroads generationally.
Yes, I totally agree, and agree with all that. And the only point that I do want to make, as long as they don't blame us baby boomers for them not having things, because we certainly earned our stripes and put in the hard yards to. And I've got this beautiful wooden dining room table that I absolutely love, and the seats are very comfortable. I've had it French polished once over the years and recushioned, but I've had that same dining room table for 42 years. I don't need a new dining room table because that one looks great still, and it's just not. I think that, and part of that, and again, this is really good marketing to that generation, is because there's a lot more disposable things. that
Mhm.
we've had that now. That doesn't. I want to redesign that bedroom, or I want to, need a new phone. It's that disposable space, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
there's a level of impatience. They grew up in an environment where you wanted something, you had it. My children don't know a life without DoorDash and Uber Eats. They want something that can show up on the front porch. And thank you, global pandemic, for, allowing us to use those services so frequently that my children now don't know life without them. But they've they have this level of they want fast action, and they cannot be patient for those of us that have to kind of think through things and be methodical about decision making. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're impulsive per se, but it's just decisive and move on and deal with the consequences and keep going. And
Mm,
that's just incredible. To your point, it's disruptive because it's a little bit of a throwaway culture and economy. I can
mm,
buy this today. I don't need it tomorrow. I can replace it next week. It's not a big deal. It's only $500 if I break my phone. There's a little bit of that comes into play, but it also almost creates a transient experience for them in life because they don't get committed. The loyalty component that we knew, you
mm.
go to work somewhere and you're there for a decade because that's what you do, or you work there for 15 years because what else are you going to do? Like that's where the people know you. That that's not a priority to them.
No.
Like building and fostering relationships and having loyalty and earning your place and all of those, it just absolutely is not a priority. And it concerns me a little bit for humankind, to be honest, because the farther away we get from those basic constructs of trust and relationship building and loyalty, the the more strife we have,
Mm.
you know, just as a people and populace in general.
Yes, yes. I'm listening to a book at the moment called Same as Ever, and it's basically saying that things repeat. It's just a different way of manifesting as it repeats. People will still be, there will still be brilliant minds. There will still be people who have envy. There will still be this, and it repeats through history, not being aware of things, but
Mm.
it's on a different level of each performance or event that
Yeah.
occurs. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, with women in
Mhm.
the workplace, or the women that you're working with, you would find then, if you're working with women across different generations, then the way you work with them to, so looking maybe at that Gen Z, as you said, that's
Mhm.
that ego, but hidden underneath it is that sense of self-doubt. Are you finding that across generations, that there's anything that sort of stands out for you?
So I think what's interesting is that business is consistent across the board. So every business needs to be structured in the same way. Ultimately, it's going to have the same challenges and struggles and necessities. And um, business in and of itself as a topic is very standard. There's not a lot of surprise there. But it's the humans that are steering the ship or making the decisions that can be dramatically different. And I have clients that run the spectrum. From they've never actually had a corporate job. They've only ever been entrepreneurial in nature. They've never worked for somebody else. To I have, clients that are in their early 60s and trying to make decisions about, do I prepare the business for sale? Like, what happens to it? What do I do next? And spanning the mindsets of those generations is really interesting because how you how I approach problem solving and collaboration and decision making is incredibly different with each one. The business owner that I work with, who is in her 60s, most of the proposals that I make to her are just in time proposals. We're not talking about, if we do this, we're setting these things up for 5 years. It's
Mm,
here's an issue that's in your business right now. Here's how we can solve it in 6 months, and it'll keep us going for 3 to 5 years if we just leave it alone.
mm,
Whereas the earlier entrepreneurs that have more volatile businesses, partially because they like to test and experiment and do a lot of those things. Um, I come in to that conversation, and a few of them refer to me this way as their business big sister. And they understand and respect how much expertise I have. And so I can come in and I can say, yeah, I'm so excited that we're excited about this. And we have these 45 other things that we're working on. And that is your goal of your life over there. And I'm not sure how any of these things all go together, you know?
Yeah.
So usually in the older generations, it's should I do A or should I do B? And the younger ones, it's an unlimited pool of what if, idea, pivot, creation, innovation, crisis, etc. And I have to come in and just kind of settle the waters and then figure that out. And it's partially from a place of being a little bit insecure and being untested and not having enough time in seat, and ultimately wanting so desperately to achieve success, however they've defined that. Most of the time it's a revenue goal is how they've defined it, that they just keep throwing more decoration on the cake, hoping that the cake becomes more beautiful. When what they don't realize is it's going to become inedible, because if you put too many sprinkles on anything, your taste buds die, right? And so it's an interesting place because I need to understand the motivations and the trigger points generationally, and then tailor my approach to working with them so that we can be the most productive that we can be.
That's a really great analogy with the cake with the sprinkles, because yeah, I see that with clients that have got, oh, I've got this idea and I've got this idea and this idea, and just even someone the other day, you know, it was looking at working with me, but again, it was a woman, so didn't make the decision. And I'm really generalizing there, but but we're talking about foundations. You know, she's starting a new business, so she's gone and got a business card and a website. And I, you know, asked the question: is it WordPress? Is it something you've got control of? Is it, you know, oh, I don't know. I don't know. I've done this. I've done this. I've done this, but I don't know. But you know, we need to set foundations and figure out exactly what you want to build, who you want to be working with, how are you going to define that, you know, what it looks like. And it's, I'll just do this, what I'm doing. And okay, yeah, I'll have a look at it in a few months' time and see where you're still just doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the foundations are so important, but and that's part of something I imagine you're finding is women just aren't good at asking for help either.
It is fascinating. So there is kind of two dimensions that I start to see. And one is the trusting credentials implicitly. You have a license, you're an expert, I trust you, I never need to ask any questions. And this falls into the category of attorneys and CPAs and financial advisors. And it's almost like some of the older generations where you're a doctor. So I just like, I
Absolutely.
trust
I'm
you
not going to
because
question you because you're a doctor and you've told me so.
yeah. And those professionals are are fallible. Like there is in fact errors that they can make. They don't understand your business. They're coming in just for a snapshot, so things can get really mismanaged very, very quickly. So there's some that don't ask any questions. They just trust that they've hired somebody that has a license. So of course they're going to know what to do and do the right thing. And then you have on the other hand the ones that just want to go watch a YouTube video and figure out how to do it themselves. And in both instances, they create a pretty significant mess. It just depends on what it is. And so what I have found really interesting with all of the business owners that I work with is when I ask them what they're paying attention to in their business, usually one or two KPIs will show up. I measure this thing and it tells me this, and this is what it is. Nobody ever tells me a financial KPI, ever. And I have had a couple of business owners in this first quarter of 2025 who all of a sudden the bank account that always had some money in it doesn't have any money in it more. And there's a panic that rises. And well, where did it go? What happened? Did revenue decrease? Did your expenses increase? Like what happened? And so we have been spending the entire quarter with a couple of my clients working on a budget and restructuring their chart of accounts so they can understand their financial reporting and getting rid of financial representatives that aren't doing exactly what they should be doing. And it's an area where I see across the board that women really struggle with is the business finance component. They can talk to you all day about what they sell, who they sell to. They will give the best service in the entire world. But when it gets down to the brass tacks of how are you running that machine from a financial perspective? What are you paying attention to? What are your stoplights? When do you know if you're in trouble? What's the warning signals? Like all of those things. They're intentionally living the life of an ostrich with their head in the sand.
Yeah, I have to agree from my experiences. I found the same. And yesterday I, ran my women's mastermind group, and we were talking about how you price your products. And that comes within that space as well,
Yeah.
depending on whether you've got a tangible item and you need to make a certain margin to cover costs, or are you pricing it on your expertise as well. But, and the responses were, there's a couple of people that said, I'm very confident with the amount that I charge. I have the value to offer. I'm not a problem with it. I don't manage, I don't discount, or this person actually does discount if people choose to pay cash, but that's just because she wants cash to flow through the society, and it's a belief of hers. But yeah, and others going, well, I do discount, and I don't know how much I should be charging. I don't know what I'm worth. And I know it's my husband, when I tell him that I'm working with a person, and he's always in this whole mindset. It's just him. It's so how much are they paying you? And oh man, and and I'll tell him, and it's not that he says, well, it sort of comes across, I can't believe they're paying you that much. It's, not that he doubts my ability to help people, but he doesn't see the value in it himself, I suppose is what that point is. But it's women not seeing the value within themselves.
And I think I refer to it as the gifts that they give that nobody knows about. So I was working with an interior decorator in December, and we were building her plan for the year, and her business had plateaued and her profit margin kept shrinking. And I couldn't figure out exactly what was happening. So we dug into her pricing, and what I uncovered was that she wasn't including her labor in the prices of her services. So she was paying herself a salary, but she wasn't even recovering that. So when I asked her, she said, well, I just need to make sure that my people are taken care of. And I said, well, you're one of your people. Like, you're one of your people. Just because you own the business doesn't mean that you're automatically taken care of. Like, if you're out there spending a whole bunch of time, measuring the house and picking out furniture, and then, supervising contractors, like, you need to get reimbursed for that. Like, that is an actual real business expense. And it took us quite a while. But as soon as we implemented the change in pricing and the structures and the bids, her profit margin went through the roof, and her confidence in pitching, because she had eliminated this like hidden discount that she hadn't told anybody. And every single female business owner has a hidden gift in their pricing. Every single one. When you get down to the details, they either discount their labor, or they don't include it at all, or they cut back their margin because they don't think that somebody will pay a premium price for something, or they omit paying themselves completely from how they want to factor it in. It exists, and men don't price that way. I've never seen somebody do that ever. They make sure they get paid every time.
Yeah, that is absolutely such a good point. I remember quite a few years ago, I priced to do some half-day training, sales training for an organization, and I sort of only just started moving into doing group training, and I chose a price, and then I went, I'll put it up a bit. Anyway, I went to the prospective client, and he came back and said, oh, so is that for each person? And I go, no, but it's not okay. That's terrific. Thinking, okay, that was a great lesson for me because I obviously undervalued what he valued.
Well, and I always say, like, a good rule of thumb with your pricing is if somebody says yes immediately, you're underpriced,
Yes.
you know? And there's a little bit of new, like, art and science with that. You kind of have to know, who you're catching and who you're after. But I even know with my business specifically, fractional COO services work best with businesses that are 3 million US dollars and above. And the reason for that is by the time you've achieved that milestone, you have a business model that's working. You have steady revenue, you have a steady profit margin, you're not still experimenting. And if you are, generally, it's a controlled experiment. I want to, introduce this product. I want to see what happens. I want to introduce a new service. I want to see what happens. I want to pull something out that's not profitable, replace it with something else. There's usually a controlled experiment happening. And when I got to the clarity that that's really where the fractional COO services, where we come in and we're embedded in your business and we're working side by side with you and really doing a part-time COO role, I also realized that those people have no problem paying what the actual true fair market value of that is, because the numbers are big when you say them out of your mouth. A 5-figure monthly retainer or multiple 5-figure monthly retainer it's a big number, but you have to also remember that there's an expectation there. So if you want to play in that space of, multiple 7-figure business owner, or you want to play in a space, you have to really kind of understand how they are going to what their expectation is going to be. Because if I had walked in and I was like, I'll come work for you, 20 hours a week and you can pay me $10 an hour, they'd be like, well, you're not qualified. Like I pay more at Starbucks to get a coffee than I do for you, so you really have to understand what they're expecting also, as a part of that equation.
That is really an important aspect of it. When you do undervalue yourself, then the prospect is not going to see that same value in
Absolutely.
you. If you've got a $10,000 business coach, then you believe if they're charging that amount, they must be good at what they do, as opposed to a $500 business coach.
And you're more likely to do what they recommend. That when there is a burn, when you see it's an investment, when you know that you're buying something premium, fill in the blank on how the language that you'd want to use, that you're more likely to do it. If it's a $97 investment on a monthly basis, human, buyer philosophy is you maybe will and maybe won't, depending on the day or the week.
Yes, and that's one of the things, having run free webinars for many years as a funnel within the business. I'll have 40, 50 people book in and 10 people turn up because it's a free thing. So it does. The good part of that, the 10 people who turn up are usually pretty committed. So that helps. But
there is that.
It is. When something's free, you can't be bothered. You just off track, you also work within that domestic violence and family court area. You mentioned yourself that you've gone through those experiences. How do you see what your skill base is helping within that space as you work there?
So I think for me anyway, nobody knew what was happening in my personal life for over a decade, including my immediate family. My parents didn't know, sister didn't know. We live in a community where we grew up. So like everybody knows everybody's business, but nobody knew. And on the outside, I had an intact nuclear family and I had this thriving professional career, right? I was flying all around the world and I had all these opportunities. And so from the outside, everything was perfect. And I think that I'm not the only person that has had an experience where I spent over a decade in a physically, emotionally, mentally, and financially abusive relationship, and where my children were at risk on a very regular basis. And so what I bring forward now is transparency and just openness that this happens to everybody. It does not matter, it's not just the impoverished woman that's trapped that has these circumstances. There's a lot of ways to be trapped. So that's one of the things that I talk about. In my case, he was incredibly smart and knew how to game the system, right? He didn't work, and still doesn't work, and knew that as long as he didn't leave a mark on anybody, he couldn't get arrested, and as long as he did things without witnesses, he couldn't get in trouble, so he was quite smart about what he did. And so I now speak publicly around A, what my experiences were, but B, the strategy that I put into place behind the scenes for many, many years. It wasn't that one thing happened and then my whole world changed. I had very intentionally for about 8 years started to work on how can I get out of this? How can I get out of this? What's the strategies and the tactics that I need to employ? And so as things are winding down with my personal situation, I'm starting to leverage my platform to bring that to life because nobody talks about it.
Mm.
Nobody talks about it. And if we don't talk about it, then those that are suffering right now will continue to suffer and be in dangerous situations.
Yeah, and it's such an important conversation. It's a very big conversation here in Australia, and the government's bringing in, new rules that
Yeah.
Any form of domestic violence is to be investigated and prosecuted, basically.
Yeah.
So there's been a few horrific cases, and that unfortunately, they happen, but they then become a catalyst for change and different views and and recognizing, although women are the ones that are mostly affected by domestic violence, men are as well. There's situations where men are in it, and because they feel obligated to their children, very much like the women do, that they stay within those situations. And it may or may not be physical, but it can definitely be financial, emotional, and as well. So, and there's support. If anyone listening, fine. I think in Australia it's 1-800-RESPECT is the phone number, but it, making sure that you take action on it, because it's so important. Having a voice, as yours is, that again, that experienced it, understand it. It's different when someone comes in that hasn't necessarily experienced it, with ideas, opinions, and your perspective is more honed to be able to be supportive, because you fully understand that it's not just as easy as saying, oh, let's just get out of here, or why don't they do that? That's not the space, is it?
No, and I would say that being very educated, spending time talking to as many professionals and a variety of individuals that work inside of the court systems, because everybody has a different perspective. I really gathered as much. I did exactly what I would do if I was doing due diligence with the business or anything else. Like, what can I learn? What do I need to know? What do I need to watch out for? Was really helpful, because now that I'm going through the process, and it's incredibly protracted and long, and I joke all of the time that I'm going to be trying to get divorced longer than Brad and Angelina Jolie did, and like their assets are much more complicated than mine.
7 children involved or something too, isn't it?
Yeah. But that's a little bit what it feels like. At least I had the foundational understanding of how this was going to play out and the gates we were going to have to go through. I think the one thing that I didn't realize, and is incredibly difficult as somebody that has survived domestic violence, is that the burden of proof is on the victim. And luckily for me, I have lots of evidence because I had a whole strategy and there was some things that I was doing. But when anything happens now, there have been multiple arrests since the first arrest happened, and the charges have been thrown out every time because the response back is, we don't have enough evidence, or this isn't severe enough, or a jury is going to think this is frivolous. And so even though things continue to happen to you, or even though in the US, by the letter of the law, it is in fact a violation of the law or the restraining order, understanding that it takes a lot of fortitude, because you're going to have to you're constantly being questioned around if what you're saying is true and accurate, and why should we believe you? And it's really, really unfortunate that that's still the place that we're in.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate. And just to, again, taking it from the male's perspective is, from a bloke that's supposedly in a domestic violence situation, the response is, we'll just harden up.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a different angle coming in on it as well. It's certainly not space that anyone needs to be in, but yeah, having to prove it, that's not good. I wish you well with all of that. Hopefully,
Thank you.
you won't be celebrating your 100th birthday or something, and it's still going.
You never know. I'm in California, so things are complicated. We'll see.
Yeah, and it's different in different places of the world. I know.
Absolutely.
I appreciate where we're going here with it. I think that's such an important space.
Yeah, good step.
When we always wrap up with 3 takeaways. We've had such a great conversation on a whole lot of different topics. Melissa, what would the 3 takeaways that you definitely want people to remember?
I would say that the first takeaway is to get really clear on what your current vision of the ideal life is. So if you could wave a magic wand, what would you be doing? Who would you be with? Where would you be? How would you be spending your time? And go back to that. So anytime you're making a big decision, ask yourself, is this going to get me closer? Or do I need to adjust that vision? And that's okay too. So I would say that's the first one, is just get quiet and still and get clarity around that. The second that I would say is that if you are wanting to pivot, if you are wanting to do something new, if you're ready to take the leap into business or even a career change, the best thing that you can do is start with curiosity and start talking to other people that have had success or that are a little bit farther ahead of you, and really find out, what did you do? How did you make it work? What's it like working in this company or in this job or these things? I found that being curious, just innately curious, will always help you find people the helpers, the people that are around that want to help and give you referrals and do well. You will find resources that way, and it will bring you clarity about if the thing that you want to do is really the thing you want to do, because sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And I would say the third is that for anybody that owns a business today and they want it to be in business for a prolonged period of time, one of the things that I would really recommend is to spend some time really starting to understand the psychology of Gen Z and Gen Alpha from an employee standpoint. So they will be working for you at some point if your team grows, and they will be your clients and your customers. So what's important to them? How do they make decisions? How much attention do they give you, and for how long? What is that conversation around loyalty and trust and stickiness and all those things? I think every business today, it would do them an immense amount of good to really understand how that cultural evolution is going to come to be, so they can be prepared to manage them and to service them.
Yeah, no, 3 great points, and there's been so many more through our conversation. It's important for people to follow that, and curiosity comes up in so many of the interviews that I do. It doesn't matter where we're sitting with things, is not just going, I have this idea and opinion, but just to be curious about how you might expand on your knowledge and your experiences by there's so much out there in the world. Asking people, listening to books, reading books, podcasts, the whole bit. Definitely podcasts like this and like your podcast as well. Melissa, how can people get in touch with you?
So the best way to get in touch with me is come follow me on Instagram. You can do that at Melissa_Franks is my Instagram handle. You can also come to the website, which is melissafranks.com. It is very easy to find me there. And if you want, you can listen to my podcast, which is the Opt-in podcast. And there we spend a lot of time talking about tips to be successful in business, whether you're working in a business or you own the business yourself.
Yeah, excellent. And all of your contact details will be in the show notes. So whether you are watching this through YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast channel, then you'll be able to find all the show notes. Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your expertise. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you. I had a great time.
And that's another episode of the We Are Women podcast. I am Janine Vosper. Remember to visit my website, janinevosper.com, book a strategy call if you want to expand the conversation. But one thing I'd really love you to do as well is to leave a 5-star review, but leave a comment also. There's so many people that I know that I've met randomly that said, I listened to your podcast, I love it. But they don't mention it, don't connect. And I would love to know what you are finding value from the podcast. So please do that. And wherever you are in the world, have a fantastic day, week, month, whatever's happening in your life, but enjoy.
So, do you feel stuck in a rut in business? Visit speechperfect.com.au and download Janine's free ebook to avoid the 5 most common stumbling blocks women face in business. It's jam-packed full of tips to overcome the barriers that could be holding you back from the success that you dream your business will be. We would love you to leave a review of today's episode and share this podcast with other women in need of entrepreneurial inspiration. Subscribe to the next episode now and join the We Are Women community.